The Forgotten Genocide, honoring 1.5 million lost lives. Picture solemn faces in faded photographs, stories locked in the eyes of a lost generation. Visualize the ruins of abandoned villages, the echoes of songs never sung again. Today we revisit one of the most haunting and overlooked tragedies of the 20th century, the Armenian Genocide, a calculated destruction which claimed 1.5 million lives between 1915 and 1923. The Armenian Genocide is a story of loss, resilience, and silence. Over a century has passed since the Ottoman Empire launched its campaign to erase the Armenian population within its borders. Yet the world still grapples with the truth of this horrific past. How did this atrocity unfold? Why has this narrative so often been ignored? More importantly, what lessons does it hold for a world plagued by repeating cycles of violence? This video is not just about the facts of the genocide. It is a plea to remember, to educate, and to ensure that history does not repeat itself. To understand the genocide, we must step back to the early 20th century and the fragile state of the Ottoman Empire. Once a towering multicultural empire ruling vast territories, by the dawn of the 1900s, it was in steep decline. Politically unstable and territorially shrinking, the empire was losing power in a competitive, brutal world. Armenians, a Christian minority living within the predominantly Muslim Ottoman Empire, had thrived as a community for centuries. They were known for their unique culture, craftsmanship, trade, and rich traditions. However, their visible success often made them scapegoats. Tensions grew as Armenian communities advocated for rights and reforms amid a rise in Ottoman nationalism. Radical elements within the collapsing empire labeled Armenians as disloyal, or worse, as an existential threat to the Ottoman state's survival. In the years leading up to the First World War, these suspicions would take on an ominous tone, paving the way for unimaginable violence. World War I served as a cover and a catalyst for atrocities. Consumed by fears of rebellion and foreign interference, the Ottoman leadership began portraying Armenians as collaborators of the empire's European enemies. These false accusations painted a target on the backs of an entire population. The breaking point came in April of 1915. On April 24th, a date now solemnly marked as Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day, the Ottoman authorities arrested and executed hundreds of Armenian intellectuals and community leaders in Istanbul. This coordinated effort effectively decapitated the Armenian population, leaving them leaderless and defenseless. From this point forward, the Ottoman government initiated a systematic campaign to eliminate Armenians from the empire. The population was deliberately and ruthlessly targeted for annihilation. The genocide unfolded through calculated stages. Families were forcibly uprooted from their homes, beginning the infamous death marches to the Syrian desert. Men were often separated from their families and executed. Women, children, and the elderly were driven into brutal conditions where they faced starvation, disease, and violence. Marching under the blazing sun or freezing cold, many succumbed to exhaustion or attacks by Ottoman paramilitary groups. The unlucky survivors who reached their destination often found themselves placed in bleak concentration camps that offered no hope of survival. Entire villages were burned to the ground. Armenian culture, churches, schools, music, literature was deliberately erased. The staggering cruelty of these acts shocks the conscience. Bodies strewn along roadsides, children ripped from mothers, communities erased overnight. By the end of 1923, 1.5 million Armenians were dead, their lives extinguished through starvation, murder, and exposure. Nearly every Armenian family was touched by this tragedy. Generations of survivors were left to bear unimaginable grief and trauma. Yet amidst the ashes, fragments of human stories persist. Testimonies of survivors who fled to neighboring countries or distant lands paint a more vivid portrait of these events. Mothers who cradled their children in the deserts, refusing to give up hope. Refugees who safeguarded pieces of their heritage despite losing everything else. It was not just the people who were lost, but an entire cultural identity that was buried. Manuscripts, music, sacred sites, pieces of a civilization obliterated to weaken anything that could connect survivors to their past. The Armenian Genocide was not only the destruction of human life, but a calculated effort to erase a people from history altogether. What makes the Armenian Genocide particularly painful is not just the horror itself, but the long silence that followed. During the war years, reports of atrocities reached the global stage. Some were documented by diplomats and journalists. Shockingly, however, these cries for justice were drowned in the post-war chaos. After World War I, the dismembered Ottoman Empire saw its leaders flee or avoid prosecution. New political alliances and priorities prevented the global powers from addressing these crimes. The perpetrators escaped accountability, and the Armenian voices of the time were largely ignored. Over time, historical denial and political convenience reduced the genocide to a dark whisper, with many governments even today refusing to officially recognize it as genocide. This unacknowledged history has had devastating consequences for surviving Armenian communities, as well as for global efforts to fight impunity for such atrocities. To this day, the battle for recognition continues. While some countries and organizations have formally acknowledged the Armenian Genocide, others shy away from the term for fear of damaging diplomatic relationships with Turkey, the successor state of the Ottoman Empire. This reluctance has denied countless Armenian families the closure they deserve. Recognition matters not only for justice, but also for education. Acknowledging the facts helps bring truth into the open and strengthens the fight against denial and revisionism. It also sends a clear message: genocide, no matter where or when it occurs, cannot be ignored without consequence. For Armenians, remembrance of this horrific chapter is not just about the past. It symbolizes cultural survival, honoring ancestors lost to hate while ensuring that their legacy endures. The Armenian Genocide serves as a harrowing cautionary tale. Its denial of recognition set a dangerous precedent, allowing future atrocities to unfold in similar ways. Adolf Hitler, while planning the Holocaust, is even reported to have said, "Who after all speaks today of the annihilation of the Armenians?" This pattern of mass extermination, from Rwanda to Bosnia to Darfur, echoes the same deadly formula: dehumanization, denial, and destruction. Studying the Armenian Genocide sharpens our understanding of the warning signs that lead to genocide and deepens our commitment to preventing similar tragedies in the future. The power of education and remembrance lies not only in uncovering hidden pasts, but also in building a foundation to prevent the repetition of violence. Recognizing the Armenian Genocide is not solely about correcting a historical wrong. It is a moral imperative to honor human dignity across all places and times. Reflecting on this tragedy, it is critical to shift focus from the overwhelming numbers to the individuality of loss. Each of the 1.5 million lives lost was a mother, father, brother, sister, a story extinguished but deserving of our remembrance. Numbers numb us, stories stir us. The Armenian Genocide is also a story of resilience. Despite staggering loss, Armenians have kept their culture alive through writing, music, and the enduring power of community. Survivors carried fragmented memories into exile, planting seeds of hope that sprouted in foreign lands. Keeping these memories alive takes collective effort. Documentaries, books, and survivor accounts have become vital tools to preserve this history. They are a torch passed down through generations, illuminating painful truths so that they cannot be forgotten. As we close, we reflect not only on a grim past, but on a powerful legacy of resistance. The Armenian Genocide left an indelible scar on humanity, but it also left lessons about remembrance, education, and the pursuit of justice. To honor the lives lost, we must ensure that this history does not remain in shadows. We remember 1.5 million Armenians not as mere casualties of history, but as individuals whose stories have meaning even today. It is our duty to uncover the truths they lived, the voices silenced, and the legacies they left behind. In doing so, we stand as witnesses to their pain and as protectors of the pledge, never again.